Good morning, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. This live stream today, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, is normally a 5 or 6 cup of coffee kind of live stream. I normally don't take something like this on without having done much more preparation in advance of it. So I'm going to follow this up with a more deep dive here shortly. Not today, probably. This will probably be my Sunday night discussion. But what I want to talk about is the pernicious nature of neoliberalism, Brexit in particular, and how neoliberalism hides the real things that are important through obfuscations that we all latch onto. They're brilliant. Capitalists are brilliant. They're brilliant at making us believe that the poison we're eating is actually good for us. And one of the things that I've done is I've provided you 3 links in the narrative of this particular broadcast that I hope you'll take the time to read. I will not lie, they are not light reading. So make sure you've had at least 1 or 2 of these puppies in you before you go ahead and dive in. But this is an extremely important subject I'm going to talk about today. And again, for those people in England and the Eurozone, etc., forgive me because I will not do this subject the justice that it deserves, and I'm telling you that up front because that's not the goal of what I'm doing here. I'm trying to show you simply this idea that neoliberalism will take an idea that we all can feel, that we can relate to, it sounds good, and they will take it to us and they will sell it to us as the medicine that we need to do great things. The EU, for example, the European Union, and in particular the Brexit subject right now, has been painted as a racist, xenophobic, nationalistic, knee-jerk reaction, blah, blah, blah. And it has been talked about in every meaningful way other than the way that it really needs to be talked about, which is understanding what it means to be monetarily sovereign, and what it means to be a currency issuing nation, and what that means to democracy in each of these nations that are part of this. Now, as you can see, in the United States, let's just look at the United States, for example. The United States is a great model to look at Europe and evaluate what the EU is doing. In the United States, we have a federal government, a national currency issuing government. And we have states that are currency using states. They cannot produce their own currency. They do not produce the US dollar that comes from the federal government. So all the states are in competition with one another as to who gets the business and who doesn't get the business. So naturally what happens is states will fight and do whatever they have to do to lure business to their area. You see this with Amazon. How Amazon went ahead and picked New York City and Virginia. What you've got here is sweetheart giveaways, tax giveaways, land giveaways, you name it, giveaways that are about bringing that business in with the idea that it's going to bring jobs to the society, to the local communities. And each state is left to cut spending, to cut taxes, to remove solvency from their world, to make it so that they're less capable of dealing with the needs of their communities, okay? And there's something to be said when you understand the relationship between the currency issuing nation and the currency using subjects, so to speak. Puerto Rico is a currency user, right? Dallas, you know what? Take the entire state of Texas. Great point, Laura. Texas is a great picture, as you see Rick Perry from years ago blatantly luring businesses down there by slashing and burning taxes. You look at what happened in Kansas, where Brownback went ahead and slashed everything, trying to lure in business. This is the perpetual race to the bottom that benefits capital. But we believe that by doing this, by eating our poison, somehow or another, we're going to be healthy, whole, and strong, because this is what it takes to have a vibrant economy. Now look over in Europe. England is a currency issuing nation. The United Kingdom, the UK, has the pound sterling. It has control over its currency. It can issue it when it needs to. It can raise taxes when it needs to. It can lower taxes when it needs to. It can sell bonds if it wants to, or gilts, or whatever it is that they do in their nation, right? They have control over their circumstances. And if something external to the nation happens, if they suddenly have a trade deficit where they are a net importer, they can offset any of those issues without taking on foreign debt to be able to offset those leakages, to offset those sways or ebbs and flows in the economy. In other words, they behave as a society. When you look at the way the Eurozone has been set up and you look at the way the EU as a whole is, what you've got is a bully in Germany. Germany is able to bend everyone's will. They're able to dictate the terms because they are a net exporting nation. Because this is what capitalism is. Capital fleet goes up there to Germany, and then everybody else has to consume. Now, what happens to all those other nation states that are net importers, that don't create more than they sell? They have to take on debt. They have to take on foreign denominated debt that they cannot pay off. Similar to what's happening in Puerto Rico, similar to what's happening in Detroit, Michigan, similar to what's happening in Greece. And Greece is a perfect example of a nation that gave up its monetary sovereignty in the drachma to go onto this euro. Gave up their monetary sovereignty to the troika, and has therefore given up its ability to deal with the shocks and awe of their own economy because they are decidedly a net importer. Do you understand the difference between being a net importer and a net exporter? On one hand, it sounds really, really good to be a net exporter if you don't understand monetary sovereignty. If you don't understand what it means to be a currency issuer, then being a net exporter sounds fantabulous. But let me explain this to you. The United States is a net importing nation. And as a net importing nation, our federal government has retained monetary sovereignty. Forget the fools that talk about the Federal Reserve. They are not worth your time. Move past them because they are literally, they're going to have to learn this, or we've got to move past them. You got to move past them because they're not helping. We have monetary sovereignty in the United States. And as a result of that, when we are a net importing nation, we can actually continue to spend money on the people to offset that. However, in these big trade agreements in the Eurozone, what they've done is they've smashed national boundaries. They've smashed all these different things that sound really good on the surface. But that, my friends, is global corporatist neoliberalism. And then what happens? What happens? And this is very painful. What happens then is that the race to the bottom is real. The race to the bottom for lower cost, cheaper products, cheaper goods and services, lower tariffs. And there is this whole stratification of the economy. At the top, the financial services group that's producing nothing of value is trading in their shadow banking, trading in their different worlds, doing all sorts of stuff. And when it screws up, it bleeds over into the real economy. And the rest of the people suffer to pay for the games, these games that are being played up here in the shadow that you can't see. This is not some grand conspiracy. They're not walking around in robes and singing in Latin. It's not like that. These people are genuinely just raking in bank. Okay? They're banking on us. We are literally stupid enough, and we've been deceived enough. We've been literally lulled to sleep believing that it's about racism. And this is the danger of neoliberals. This is what neoliberalism does, and this is why many progressives who claim to be progressive are not in any way, shape, or form progressive, because they fall back to this neoliberal narrative that divides us and takes our eyes off the prize. And I'm telling you, the real war is up here in the stratification of the economies as they sit there and extract wealth and suck it up to where we can't see it anymore. It never makes it down to us anymore. And it never makes it down to the European Union. And those folks over there are seeing the effects of neoliberal policies, and it is brutal. Because for those nations to be able to do something to offset their economy, they could have, when they were their own currency issuing nation, they could have offset those leakages and kept their economy going. But they've lost that now. They have to borrow from the Troika. They have to borrow funds. And then the big bad bully of Germany gets to dictate whether or not the terms are acceptable. And then you got to look at the trade agreements themselves. The trade agreements themselves are poison. This is neoliberalism. There is no excuse for a liberal, progressive, any progressive, a real progressive, to support this stuff. There's no excuse for it other than you've been deceived and that you're still trapped in a neoliberal mindset that thinks about things in terms of race, this and this, that, because what they have done, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter whether you like this story or not. This story is not up for discussion in the sense of whether it's right or wrong. This is facts. The stratification, the financialization is real. It's happening. And to keep us blinded from it, we somehow assume that if they want to extract, and they may be racist as hell, wanting to leave the Eurozone has got nothing to do with their racism. Maybe it does. Maybe that's how they manifest it. But guess what? Even the racists sometimes are correct on financial issues. And this is the danger. They've made it so that people immediately knee-jerk respond and say, oh, it's got to be wrong. They're just racist. They're just crazy nationalists. And this is the danger of neoliberalism. It's either yes or no. It's always ones and zeros. And it's always deceptively for us. It's the right thing. Oh my goodness. How could you possibly want to do this, that, and the other? And the reality is it is poison. Pure and utter poison. Please do me this favor. Understand, a nation that has the ability to create its own currency can never go broke on its own currency because it creates it at will. Do you understand? So it doesn't matter if it's the US, it doesn't matter if it's the UK, it doesn't matter if it's Australia, Japan, China, doesn't matter. They have monetary sovereignty. They have control of their own currency. It does not matter about foreign exchange. It doesn't matter about the bond markets. It doesn't matter about any of that. The currency issuing nation has the ability to deal with whatever it needs to deal with. It's super important that you get this, because if you don't get it, you're going to continue to say really, really, really bad things. And you're going to think you were doing a good thing. You're going to think that you were on the right side of the issue because you're anti-racism. And that is good. I'm anti-racism too. We should all be against racism. Racism is a disgusting thing. But let me tell you, neoliberalism prays and feeds and creates and fosters and foments real, honest-to-God xenophobia and racism. Neoliberalism creates it by creating artificial scarcity to make the wealthy up here fat and happy while we suffer and hate each other down here. This is so real. If you don't get this, you'll continue to do the same stuff, and we will continue to see these horrible, horrible global corporate takeovers. And you see people like Lee Camp talking about, they're so close, they get so much right, but they're so wrong. They get so much right, but they're so wrong. And I want these people to wake up and see this. It is so vital. This isn't, look, trust me, I wish that I could be the hyperbolic guy that talks about crazy nonsense. I'm here to tell you, this is legit stuff. Sometimes it makes people's eyes glaze over, but it is the real McCoy. It's the real deal. It's not as sexy, it's just true. And sometimes the truth is boring. But this is far from boring once you understand the deception, the corrosive evil, the pernicious nature of neoliberalism. And when you talk about, hey, maybe we should privatize Social Security, maybe we should privatize the National Park Service, maybe we should privatize healthcare, maybe we should privatize education, maybe we should privatize. This, my friends, is a way for capital to continue to grow and fatten and build its own. This is what Jeff Bezos has done. This is what we see all over the world. And it is a danger to all of us. So when you read your next Brexit article and you see them try to make it about racism, you need to know that, yes, there are racists involved in this, but it is not about racism. It is 100% about the economic destruction that neoliberalism does and these trade agreements do. Please take the time to read the 3 points articles that I put into the narrative of this live stream. I'm begging you, take the time to read them. Read them over and over again. Read them slowly. Learn. It is not easy stuff, and I promise you I understand that some of this will be confusing. But most of it will not be. And it will be clear when you see the game, the end game. And it will help you to make better choices. It will help you make better activists. It will help you be better voters and better citizens of whatever nation that you are in. I need you to take the time to read these 3 articles and really get your head wrapped around what we're dealing with. Because this is the same problem we have in the United States. And you see people not understanding why states can't do Medicare for all, why states can't afford to do green energy, why they can't afford to do a lot of these things. Some of them, they can do different things, but many of them can't. And it's because we've cut the spigot off the federal government, and we've been led to believe that somehow or another we're in debt to private banksters. And that pernicious lie has destroyed so many lives. And that's why people talk about the private Federal Reserve, they talk about the private bankster, they talk about all this stuff, and they don't understand the next step. They're actually doing more to hurt us than help us. Please take the time to read the 3 articles that I have in the narrative of this. And we will return to this very, very soon. I will bring experts on to talk about Brexit. I will bring experts on to talk about monetary sovereignty. And we will make sure you are equipped to be better citizens, better voters, and better activists. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a great day, everyone.